Hey there, everyone. Welcome to the show. I don't even know how to introduce you. Like, blast from the past, welcome back. I mean, we've got a new guest on today with us, Lisa. I don't even know how, but I guess for a lot of the people out there, they already know who you are. And we used to do the podcast together. I'll explain a little bit about who you are, what we used to do for those people that maybe uh, started listening to the podcast after you got super busy doing your own thing. But Lisa used to join me on the the Survivalist Prepper podcast. Made it a lot of fun actually because we just talked crap to each other and got talked back and forth about preparedness and everything. And it was a lot of fun. And we do tinfoil hat time like we're going to do today. So it was a lot of fun. So want to bring Lisa back on today. It's a perfect week to bring you on for tinfoil hat time. All this alien news came out. And it's like, I was telling, I forget who I was telling, but I was like, Lisa must have talked to her people or something and told them to put on a show because she's going to be on a live video this week. So at any rate, let everyone know, like I said, the new people, what your credentials are, why we're talking about first aid and all that. And then also some of the things that you've got going on now, why it's really hard to, why you're not on the Survival Preppers podcast anymore, because you got 14 YouTube channels and all that stuff and all that. So just explain to people who you are and what you do and all that.
Well, I'm Lisa. I'm his wife, that guy over there, wherever he is. That's Dale, and I am his wife. And yes, I used to be on the Survival Prepper podcast. We used to just kind of banter back and forth. And he would say something, and then I would say something, not trying to call him out on it or say that was a dumb answer, Dale, but sometimes it was a dumb answer, Dale.
It's not, I do that a lot.
And after we were doing that for a while and you were doing more and more of the survivalist prepper and survival preppers and all of the things that you're doing, I was like, okay, I'm going to do my own thing. So I have two YouTube channels. One is the Budget Equestrian. That's like my mainstay YouTube channel. And now I branched off and I have the Budget Equestrian. And then I also have DIY Diva, which is a new channel. So not very many subscribers on there yet, but that way I can keep things separated and do my DIY projects and things that I like to do in the house separate from being around horses, because for some reason, people that are into horses and being a budget equestrian aren't really into like Dollar Tree decorating and stuff. I don't understand, but
Yeah.
whatever. And so those are my side gigs, I guess. And then I also have a website, budgetequestrian.com. And then I also have another website, truewhimsy.com, which kind of correlates with the DIY Diva. And the reason I'm doing those is I enjoy preparedness. I mean, that's what we do on a day in, day out basis. But unfortunately, with us being into preparedness, and I know Dale has talked about it a lot, you tend to kind of get pushed to the wayside when it comes to YouTube and different, places like that, because
Censored. Yeah.
it just seems like they don't want people to know how to do this stuff for themselves. They don't want you to know how to do first aid. They don't want you to do that stuff. They want you to, go to them for help. So that was why I kind of went off on my own thing. And then during the day, I go to work all day, and I'm actually a registered nurse, and I have I guess I'm specialized in advanced wound care and also diabetic foot care. I'm the foot nurse in the clinic that I work in, and I get to see lots and lots of feet every single day. Some of them are pretty, most of them not so much.
Yeah. Hey, Anthony's in the chat. He said, "Hey, Lisa and Dale, just want to let you know because you can't see the comments I put up, but Brandon's in there, and I didn't notice this, but he said matching shirts, super cute. I didn't even pay attention to that. I'd have changed my shirt.
We planned that.
Yeah. No, we didn't. At any rate, yeah. So Lisa is qualified to talk about this stuff a lot more than I am, and the stuff we're going to talk about today, it's the basic first aid, the basic first aid things. Some of the things we're going to take questions as well. So if anybody in the chat has any questions about different aspects of this, I've got a couple questions from Kenzie that he gave me. Kenzie up in Canada, a couple really good questions. So we're going to go through all of that stuff, and then we'll get into some of the
some of the
tinfoil hat.
really important stuff, Dale.
Yeah,
okay?
yeah.
The really important stuff we have to talk about: the aliens in Las Vegas, and everything that's going on.
Yeah. Hey, Mandy's in the chat as well. Hey, Mandy, how you doing? Yeah, the aliens, super important. That's what they want you to think. That's my opinion on the whole thing, but we'll get into that. One other thing before we get in, you've got a kind of a special occasion tomorrow, right? For people that have been listening to this show all the time, they probably know Frisbee because you had him longer than we did the podcast. And there's been a lot of changes. You've gone through a lot of crap recently. I'll let you explain all the things that have gone on, and then what's going on tomorrow. So yeah, let everyone know what's going on with the horses.
Okay, well, Frisbee, unfortunately, I made the decision in early December to have him put down because he was not doing well with his Cushing's and having bouts of laminitis. So he wouldn't walk. And I was like, I'm not going to keep him around. I'm not going to have him in agony just for months and months and months because I'm, being selfish. I would keep him forever if I could, but only if he's healthy. So I decided to end his suffering, and we put Frisbee down in December. And then, oh God, it's probably been a month. Then Pleasant, the other horse that I had, he actually passed away. And that was kind of a shock because I went out to feed him and he was dead. So that was like, oh my gosh, that's never happened before. So that was very hard. It was very awkward as I didn't know what to do. It was like, okay, now what do I do? So for the past month, I've been horseless. And it's been really challenging because I didn't really realize how much horses were a part of my life. Yes, Dale is a part of my life forever. But the horses, I mean, it's really hard when you are used to doing so much, like every morning and every evening, and in the in-between time, that's where I would spend my time. But I didn't really have like a purpose. I mean, I could do my other stuff, but just a part of me was like missing. So tomorrow I'm actually going to a horse rescue that I went and I found 2 horses. So I am going to go get them tomorrow, and I'm really, really excited.
One you can ride, right? And then the other one's like a little runt. The other one's like my style, little oddball horse. Yeah, just cuter than hell though. Yeah.
He's adorable. So the horses, they are actually at a horse rescue, and so I'm actually going to change their names. I've never changed horses' names before. I've always kept their names that they came with, but I had to because these guys are so cute. So their names are going to be Timon and Pumbaa.
Yeah. Hey, All American Preppers in the chat. He said, sorry to hear that. They become good family, or they become family good horses do. So yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. A lot of people in the chat, Mandy and Dorian and Kenzie and everybody saying, sorry for your loss, all that stuff. And then, very cool. Yeah, it'll be fun tomorrow. I'm curious to see that little sucker. I know he's
so cute.
He's kind of got an attitude though, right?
Oh, he does. He's got like how little dogs have, they're all big and bad and tough. Well, he's like that because he's a pony and he's little bitty. And then
Napoleon
Timon
complex.
What's that?
Napoleon complex.
Yeah. Yeah. And then Timon, he's a quarter horse. So he is a lot bigger than Pumbaa.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, very cool. Just wanted to get all that stuff out of the way, let everyone know what you're doing and what's going on tomorrow with you and all that stuff. You've been working your butt off along with the yard and everything else you've got going on. You've been working your butt off out there too. So, somebody, I think it was Kenzie said, Dale is the hardest working horse in the homestead. You know, I would love to take credit for that, but I think Lisa probably is. So I'm a close second though. I am a close second.
I don't know. The other day, when I was at work, you were texting me and like, I did this and I did this and I did this and I did this. And I'm like, what the heck did you eat? You're like, you just nonstop. Every time I turn around, you're doing something else. You're doing something else. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah. Like a freight train, man. Once I get going, I don't stop, but getting me going, that's a totally different story.
When you get going, you're just like, yeah, nonstop.
Yeah. Kevin being a smart ass in the chat can Lisa teach me how to stitch up a wound? I don't think we're going to be going over that today. But with that, I suppose we will get into what we were going to talk about today with the first aid stuff. And I suppose before we get into some of the sort of real life type scenarios and what we should do and what we shouldn't do, let's go over just the basics of a first aid kit. And we don't need to list out every single supply, because I think when you're talking about a basic kit, those are kind of self-explanatory. I know you've got a few supplies that are probably not so basic, but we'll see with those. They are. Well, you think they are, yeah, for what you do. But that's kind of what my point is here, is the average person, we think about all these cool things, especially in preparedness, where you're looking at trauma kits and all the, chest seals and quick clot and all these different things. We need to think about this. And I believe it was, I don't know who it was on the show the other day, or somebody in the chat. Yeah. Silvasorb gel. Somebody in the chat on the show I was doing with All American Prepper the other day, and Tag and Grumpy Acres was talking about the 80-20 rule. And I think it applies perfectly to a first aid kit, right? Because most of the stuff that you have is going to be good for certain situations, right? But 20%, or how did I put this earlier? 80% of what you're going to need your first aid supplies for, 20% of your first aid supplies are going to handle those situations, right? So your gauze, your Band-Aids, all the basic things in your first aid kit. When you think about the disaster situations that are possible, when you think about cutting your arm, say you're working and something falls on your arm and you have a big gash on your arm, that's far more likely than having to dig out a bullet of your shoulder, right? Yeah. While it's possible, there are things that are more possible that I think we need to pay attention to as far as first aid goes, for a number of different reasons, right? Am I making sense here to you as far as what first aid supplies?
I think, yeah, you're running away with the show, Dale. This is my show right now. Let me run with the show.
Yeah, go for it.
All right. So I think honestly, 80% of the stuff that you have in your first aid kit is what you're going to use. Then there's like the specialty things that you're going to use 20% of the time. Maybe the chest seal, or maybe it would be so nice if we had an AED. That would be awesome to have in a first aid kit. But just your basic stuff like alcohol, so rubbing alcohol or alcohol swabs, gauze, and different kinds of gauze. So like 4x4 gauze, 2x2 gauze, just like the gauze pads. And then clean gauze, or the bulky gauze that you can wrap around things, ace wraps. I'm trying to think what else I could use on a daily basis. And Coban or vet wrap. Vet wrap is awesome. And what's nice about vet wrap is it basically works the same as an ace wrap would, but with a little bit more compression. So just the typical things, Band-Aids. I even have some Band-Aids. These were so cool. I got these on Amazon. I don't know. Can you see that? Yes. And this was like, it's a pack of 50 Band-Aids, and it was like $6. So super, super cheap and awesome for a first aid kit. It has different types of Band-Aids in it. So it's got little ones, big ones, medium ones. This is what you're going to use a lot of time in your first aid kit. So things and like
how much was that?
That was like $6.
And that's Curad. So it's a good brand too.
Yeah. I had, because a lot of the stuff that I wanted to share were things that I got to update my first aid kit for the barn. But I mean, this is stuff that we can use. This is stuff that we will use if we need to. But like my favorite, there's my Silvazorb. Yeah, that's the right way up, Silvazorb. But I found this on Amazon, and it's like the same thing. It's just a silver gel. So when you can't find one, then you just can put something else in its place. So that was really cool.
We'll go into that a little bit, because for the newer people, the older people know your thoughts on Neosporin and stuff like that. But with that, I'm curious, with the silver gel, I'm sure you've done a little bit of research in it as far as the ingredients, and is the consistency the same? I mean, is it basically the same as Silvazorb?
Let's find out.
Oh, you haven't even opened it yet, so I'm sitting here lying.
It's close.
So the consistency is pretty close. It's clear rather than white, though, right?
No, Silvazorb is clear too.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, yeah.
This is, I don't know if you can see that. But actually it's holding its shape pretty well, which is pretty impressive. So it's a hydrogel, which means it's going to keep a wound moist, and a wound needs to be moist in order to heal. And then the Silvazorb, now this Silvazorb, this is old. So this is in my first aid kit for my horse. But so the Silvazorb is a little bit thicker. Ooh. Oh, wait, there. Little bit thicker.
Okay.
And
why, for the new people, why is Neosporin the devil, basically? Why do you recommend silver gel rather than the triple antibiotic?
Because we've overused the triple antibiotic way too much. And so a lot of times people actually have a sensitivity to one of the antibiotics that is in the triple antibiotic. It's neomycin. And a lot of people are actually, they have a sensitivity to it. So when you put Neosporin on a wound or somewhere in your body, and if you have a sensitivity to the neomycin, you're going to react to it. And then you're going to be, oh my gosh, I'm infected. So you're going to put more Neosporin on it, and then it's just going to make the problem even worse. So that's one of the problems. Another problem is we've used it so much. I mean,
antibiotics in general too.
And all of the different antibiotics that are in it are probably, I don't even know if they're okay on their own anymore. Bacitracin is an okay one. That's one that I would use as like a topical. But when we've used something over and over and over again, what happens to the resistant factor? The bacteria become resistant to it. And actually bacteria is there. All of the bacteria that are around right now, there's no new antibiotics that have been invented or been developed. And I don't even remember when the last one was developed, but almost every bacteria now is resistant to the antibiotics that we have. So then you end up having to use stronger antibiotics like vancomycin, or there's another one, I can't remember what it is. But there's even, bacteria is even resistant to that. They have something called VRE, which is like a vancomycin resistant enterococci. So it's like no matter what antibiotic we have, the bacteria seem to be smarter, and they're building up a resistance to it, and they can tolerate it. There's even gonorrhea that is resistant to bacteria or to antibiotics, that's terrifying.
I was going to say gonorrhea that's resistant to bacteria?
No, antibiotics.
Tony said in the chat real quick, we'll go off topic here for a second. He said, what about crazy glue for sealing cuts?
I probably wouldn't do that. I think if there's a cut,
if you had nothing else,
you have what's that?
If you had no other option?
Especially if you had no other option, I wouldn't probably use crazy glue, because how did that cut happen? And was it something dirty that potentially got inside of you? And then if you put crazy glue on top of it, you're sealing whatever that dirtiness was inside of you. So you're setting yourself up for an infection.
Yeah, and that's kind of what Kevin said in the chat too. He said it's great for small wound closures as long as you make sure it's cleaned before you do it. See, and that's the difference between the way I think and the way you think as a nurse. Because I'm like, okay, I'm just seal it up, done deal. Everything's working now. I'm not leaking anymore. Let's get back to work. And you're thinking about, you're like 3 steps ahead. It's a good thing we're married. That's all I gotta say. It's a good thing I married a nurse, because
well, it's a good thing for you we're married.
I may only have like 1 arm and 3 toes left if if I didn't. Yeah, I mean, just Silvasorb is cool stuff. It's really cool stuff. And with that, I forget before I even went on that. Oh, we were talking about the cleaning the wound and all that. Kenzie had a cool comment, or he's got a couple of things we're going to talk about today, but he was talking about cleaning a wound, and we're just kind of going to go where the conversation takes us. So, and if anybody does have any comments in the chat they want us to go through, just leave it in the chat. We'll do a Q&A type thing. But when it does come to cleaning wounds, he had talked about if you don't have access to water, what can you do? Say you are, I know you're going to talk about some saline and stuff, but say you're in a bug, and talk about that first, but then say you're in a bug out situation, or some situation where in a wilderness situation, you don't have access to clean that wound out. What would be the best course of action, I suppose, other than crossing your fingers and hoping you find water soon?
That's pretty much
it. Yeah.
If I didn't have any water, okay, first, if I didn't have any water, hopefully I would be with my go bag, and I would have some of my first aid supplies, because then I would have alcohol wipes. I actually have saline. So like if you don't have access to water, but if you have somebody with contact lenses, saline solution, I think it's 9% normal. It's not normal saline, but it's close. So that would work pretty good. Or if you had drinking water in your water jug or whatever, you could use that. Something just to clean it off. But then I think the most important thing is you want to cover it up. So you might have to rip off your shirt, or you might have to steal a piece of Dale's underwear, or the bottom of his shirt or something. You don't want
to put that on a wound, trust me. You might as well keep it uncovered. You might as well just chop your arm off at that point.
But hopefully, if you find yourself in that type of a situation, there's somewhere where you actually have a first aid kit with you, either in your go bag, your car, your home. Just that we have lots of first aid kits everywhere, simply for that reason. But Dale just he injures himself and he doesn't tell me about it. And then he comes in and he's like got blood dripping down him. And I'm like, what did you do? And he's like, it's fine. I'll rub some dirt on it. It's like, yeah, let's rub dirt on it, Dale.
Yeah, it'll stop. Like Kevin and Brian always say, and you always say all the time, all bleeding stops eventually, right?
It does.
So, I was thinking in a situation like that, if there's not much you can do, there's not much you can do. But clean it off as much as you can. Definitely don't seal it up like with the super glue and stuff. Definitely don't do that, because you're going to have to get to a point. Maybe you do come across somewhere where you can clean it, right? You're going to want to do that later. Although debriding a wound after it's sort of been, I guess, I don't know what to call it, active for a number of hours or whatever, probably a lot harder to debride something at that point, right?
No, it just depends on like the supplies and stuff that you have. But yeah, and if you don't have anything, and let's say it's a actively bleeding wound, you can apply pressure to it. And
I was pointing at Kevin's comment. It's got to be clean dirt.
Oh,
I was pointing at my screen. You can't see the comments, so you're probably, I should have warned you. You're like, what the hell are you doing, Dale?
But if it's a bleeding wound, I would probably put pressure on it, just because by applying pressure to the wound, it's going to stop the bleeding.
Yeah, but I'm just talking like stitching. There is what are there's steri strips, and then what are these stitch strips? I can't remember what they're called.
Oh, the zip stitch or something? Zip
stitch, yeah. Things like that. Yeah. You wouldn't, if you can't clean a wound out, you wouldn't want to put one of those on, correct?
No, but once you got to a position or a place where you actually could treat the wound, and let's say that it did potentially need stitches and you needed to bring the edges of the wound together, you could do that with, I would say, steri strips or those zip stitches. I think that's what they're called. I can't remember.
I have one back here somewhere and I can't find it. So
yeah, those are cool. Actually, we have one of the surgeons, he uses those for
the huge ones, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, he uses like, he'll have like a whole big piece of it on an incision, and then the patient comes in and it's pretty cool. I got to take them off. I'm like, I've used these before. This is awesome. But steri strips are good. Those zip stitches are cool, but they're really, really expensive. And steri strips are super cheap, cheaper than duct tape even, I think.
Yeah. And Kevin said in the chat too, zip stitches are great for the air, but not so much for the field. And that's because, you probably have to have a nice clean surface. Doctors can make sure that it's going to adhere properly and all that stuff. And yeah, but they are cool. Steri strips are my answer to if you've got to stitch something. And I know preppers love to go out and learn how to stitch, and it's a good skill and all that. But we're not going to go too far into this, but it's just something you got to be really cautious about. So why not, that with me, I don't want anybody poking needles in me and stitching me up anyway. So throw a couple steri strips on me, pressure dressing, whatever you need to do, but it'll seal up eventually. So yeah.
It's just going to take longer to heal. That's all.
Yeah. And I've had that happen to my finger right here when I was a kid. My mom slammed the window. I think I've told this story before, but my mom slammed the window and I was underneath it and the glass came down and sliced me right there. And she was going to go take me to the doctor to get stitches. And I was like, nope. And this sucker popped open for like 3 weeks after that. I had to keep, but eventually it's closed now. No stitches and it's closed now. So let's get back to the first aid kits a little bit, because I don't want to run out of time talking about all this stuff. I mean, we could literally do 3 hours on first aid stuff, especially with you talking about any medical stuff. You could go on forever.
I could talk all day about first aid stuff.
Yeah. And All American Prepper talked about people need to understand about being the first responder and all that stuff. And we wanted to cover that as well. But before we get into that, I did want to cover this. As far as first aid kits for people in general, you've got different types of first aid kits. You've got different places for first aid kits. So when somebody is first starting out, you're basically making a first aid kit, a general first aid kit, right, for your home. Mm-hmm. And then you would want to, how would you go about doing it? Say you weren't, you didn't have all the knowledge with all the different supplies that you do. How would you go about it? Just creating a general first aid kit, and not each supply, but would you go about the first kit and then build upon that? And maybe as you take classes or something, then you gather more supplies. And then you've got your car, you've got your animals. There's 14 directions for you to go. So you take it wherever you want.
Well, I think when you're getting started, I think a good place to start would just be to have a basic first aid kit. It doesn't need to be anything fancy, but I would caution you against buying one that's too expensive, because a lot of times you'll find first aid kits that are like in the drugstores or Walmart, places like that, or even on Amazon. It'll say 1,000 piece first aid kit for $19.95. But what they don't tell you is you're getting 900 Band-Aids in that first aid kit, which is
cheap
good.
Band-Aids.
Yeah. But you want to start with something like that, just for peace of mind that you've got a first aid kit. Then I think as you learn and your skills go up, I think training is really, really important. Basic first aid. There's so many classes that you can take, even like American Red Cross, American Heart Association. I don't know if the Red Cross has the Stop the Bleed classes, but that class is awesome to go to. If you have a Stop the Bleed class, you could probably do a Google search for it in your area and find one. But I would highly encourage anyone to participate in that class, because it's really awesome. But what I would do next, after I have my basic first aid kit that I bought at Walmart, then I'm going to start making my own personalized first aid kit for our house. And I think it depends on what works best for you. If you work best in like a go bag type kit, fine, do something like that. And if you work better in say a tackle box, get a tackle box and start putting first aid supplies in it. It just depends on what is going to work best for you. There is no right or wrong way of how you build your kit. Just build it. Start off with buying one thing. Buy the Band-Aids, buy some silver gel, buy some alcohol swabs. Like maybe budget for yourself $10 every 2 weeks that you're going to buy first aid supplies. I think one of the things that I would buy, and I would recommend them a lot, is just plain gauze. Gauze, there's so many purposes, so many things that you can use this for. So gauze is awesome. You can get the huge packages of it. I mean, they're like big, like this tall, and they have like 900 gauze, individual gauze pieces in it. And I think they're like maybe $12 on Amazon or places like that. And it's not sterile. So when you buy gauze, like in packages like this, it's sterile. So until you open it, it's sterile. But when you open it, these little boogers, I don't even know how to open them. See, that's tearing something open. That's hard to keep it sterile. But this is large gauze pads from its Band-Aid brand. And they have different types of gauze. So, but look at, that's a big, huge piece of gauze. There's so much you could do with that. You could wrap it around your head. You could,
Once, maybe.
Fold it. You could almost make a tourniquet style dressing with it. Lots of things that you can do with a piece of gauze. So just slowly add to your kit as you go. And then when you get one kit done, well, you could do a car kit. You could do a kit for your family members. You can do, if you have pets, you need to have a first aid kit for your pets. And I have them in my car. Dale has one in his truck. Hopefully we don't have to use it, but it's nice to know that it's in there. Mm-hmm. And that's like, my car kit is way different than the kits that we have here. So like we have one in the garage. We have one in our hall closet. I have a big, huge bag that's full of first aid supplies. And then in my barn, I actually took a Husky toolbox, one of the Husky rolling toolboxes, and it has the different compartments. So I have I think I have 3 different compartments on that thing. That is all first aid supplies for the barn. So it can be for people or for animals. One thing I think is really, really nice to have, and I don't see a lot of people having this in their first aid kit, is a pair of bandage scissors. So it could either be like the EMT shears. Those are good. I prefer the Lister bandage shears just because they're awesome and they work really well. I use those every day. I have a 8-inch pair of Lister bandage scissors, and I've got a lot of other pairs too. Unfortunately, I don't have them right here, so I can't show them to you. But that is something I would highly encourage you to add to your first aid kit, is a pair of bandage scissors, because what's really nice with those is they have like a longer end on one of the blades for the scissors. So you can't cut somebody with that. I mean, you could, but it would take a lot of practice, or take a lot of like trying on your part, trying to cut somebody. But if you had to cut somebody's pants off, cut their shirt off, or even cut off an old dressing that you had on, those scissors are awesome because you know that you're not going to cut the person. So bandage scissors, lots of different Band-Aids, gauze, like I said earlier, vet wrap. Vet wrap's very affordable too. You can get that in different sizes. Rubbing alcohol. Right now you can finally find it again. For a long time, due to the pandemic and the supply issues or whatever, we were being told you couldn't find rubbing alcohol. But thankfully now you can. So yeah. Rubbing alcohol peroxide is good. Witch hazel. I mean, anything you can pretty much think of, like first aid supplies, you should have some around so you can use it if you need it. But if you don't need it, hopefully by having all that stuff, you won't need it. Yeah. That's my mentality.
And I've got a few questions that we're stacking up that kind of go through everything you were just talking about. So we'll just go through these in order. The first one was Kenzie. He said, I was taught to build a first aid kit based on common injuries and build out from there. That's basically what you were just saying, correct? Is start with the stuff that is, and what we talked about in the beginning, the 80-20 rule. Start with the stuff that is going to be useful, not just in a disaster situation, not just in an SHTF situation, but every day. Things that can save you money. So you don't have to go to the doctor for every little thing. If you've got, and that was the next one, was the training. If you've taken CPR classes, if you've taken stop the bleed classes, if you've taken those things, that's where I believe it was Kevin in the chat earlier that said, make sure if you have the supply, make sure you know how to use it. So as you take those classes, then you build out that first aid kit like you were talking about, right? You've got some crazy stuff that like you talked about that first aid kit we have upstairs in the closet. That is the last place I go because I know getting through that, I don't know what half the shit in there is. So sorry, half the stuff in there is. I forget which show I'm on. But so I'll go to there's a smaller one downstairs. That's usually my go-to because it's got the gauze pads. I can make my own bandage and, do things like that. But yeah, it's the skills that are important. The more you learn about this stuff, the more you can expand your first aid kit and the more you understand which direction you need to go with it as far as cars, pets. I mean, all those different things. Yeah. Charlie Angel, I'll get your thoughts on this. You said pain relief meds, antibiotics are important also. We didn't really, or did you? I don't know. Did you touch on pain meds and stuff like that? So nope. That is a huge part of a first aid kit as well, right? You've got the antidiarrheals. You've got all the different things for those sicknesses that might pop up here and there. Somebody's got the runs, somebody's dehydrated, somebody's got allergies. I mean, all of those over-the-counter medications are super important, right? As well as the antibiotics. That's a little harder. That's a little tougher though, right?
Yeah, antibiotics. I'm not a huge fan of storing massive amounts of antibiotics because number one, if you need to know what bacteria you're treating, because if you just throw some antibiotic at a bacteria because you think that's what it is and it's not going to help. And then you run the risk of now you've just killed off some of your normal flora in your gut. And I mean, there's every antibiotic that there is, like what I was saying earlier, every bacteria is pretty much becoming resistant to antibiotics. So if you know when you're going to use doxycycline versus are you going to use Augmentin or Bactrim? And if you are going to use Bactrim, are you allergic to it? Is the person that you're going to use it on, are they allergic to it? Do you know what you're treating? Some bacteria will respond to Bactrim where others won't. And some bacteria will respond to Augmentin where others won't. Knowing the difference between a broad spectrum antibiotic and one that's more focused. These are things that, I mean, you really need to know. And yes, antibiotics are helpful, but you got to know what you're treating. So are you treating a strep? Are you treating a staph infection? What kind of antibiotic would you use to treat that? Well, one way to find out is you can get a nursing drug guidebook, the nursing handbook that talks about all of the different drugs. That right there. Yeah. And look at how old that thing is, 2005.
But you can get an older version, right? Doesn't need to be updated, right?
You can find them online for maybe $2, and it's going to have, I mean, lots of different medications in it. It's even
Pills.
It has pictures. It has even over-the-counter medication, aspirin, Tylenol, ibuprofen. And those medications, over-the-counter medications, are really important to have in your first aid kit or like in a med cabinet. So I like to keep the medicines separated from the first aid supplies. I don't know why. I think that's just, I don't know, maybe it's because I'm a nurse and that's what we do. We don't keep the medicine in the same place where the bandaging supplies are kept. But even like over the counter medication, you have to be careful with, because let's say, for example, that, I have high blood pressure, so I'm on blood pressure medication. I can't just take certain antihistamines. If I do, that like causes my heart to race and all kinds of other problems. So just knowing what medication I can take. So I can take certain antihistamines, like I think they're called second generation antihistamines like Allegra or Zyrtec. I can take those and it won't affect my heart rate and it won't cause my blood pressure to increase. But Benadryl, things like that, that'll cause people's blood pressure to go up, which in some instances might be a good thing. But for someone with high blood pressure, probably not.
See, the average person, the average prepper, this is like, holy crap. Like, if the poop hits the fan, I'm not giving anybody anything. But you brought, I mean, very good points, and you brought up a good point with the antibiotics too. They absolutely will be valuable if you're talking about even just something that's slow rolling, not necessarily a Mad Max type situation. Something where you can't get to the doctor, or you can't get the medication. Maybe you can get to the doctor, but they can't get the medication. So it is something that would be good to have stockpiled, but you really got to, just like everything else we've been talking about, it's good to probably have a chest seal, but you got to know how to use a chest seal, right? It's good to have the different types of antibiotics, but you got to know what situations those would be good for. If you're treating, trying to get the infection to go down on some sort of wound, that's a totally different antibiotic than if you were trying to treat something like a stomach issue or something like that. And if you're just dosing people with the wrong antibiotic, one, it's probably not going to do anything, but it could actually do, I mean, not life-threatening harm, but it could actually do harm, right? Because you were talking about it kills that different types of flora, right?
Right. But it could kill somebody too. If you don't know if somebody has an allergy to, say, penicillin, when you give them penicillin and they have an anaphylactic response, do you have the EpiPen and stuff to be able to manage that? So you've got to know what you're doing. And even in today's world, when I have a doctor tell me, I ask him, I'm like, this guy needs an antibiotic. And he's like, yeah, he does. So a lot of times we'll culture the wound. And then sometimes you can tell by the way a wound looks what it is, what kind of bacteria it is. But sometimes you can't. But I sit there and go into the chart. I go into the chart and order the antibiotics. And if they have an allergy, the computer tells me.
Yeah.
I don't have to look it up.
Yeah. Which is why this book is a pretty good book to have. And you can get on eBay or wherever and get a used, like I said, this one's 2005. There's no reason to get a brand new one. The newer medications are going to be in the newer ones, but they're, as far as a prepper, what we're concerned about, the newer medications usually aren't something that we're real concerned about. So, but yeah, it's one of those things. I think if you are, antibiotics are important, but make sure you know what they're used for. Don't just stockpile them. It's like seeds, everything with preparedness. Getting your seed vault, right? Getting your seeds ready. And if the shit hits the fan, you're going to go plant your seeds and you're going to have your own garden. No, it's not going to work like that. If somebody's got an infected wound, you're just going to give them one of each of the antibiotics twice a day. and that, that's the Dale method right there. That's the shotgun approach.
There's the Dale method. That's,
yeah. All right. Yeah. I want to move on now. We've talked about that a little bit, but Kenzie had a comment in here, which is sort of right up your alley, which is something good for people to know, because we think about dressings, and we know, a lot of us know that, and I'll let you go through this as well. Compression dressings, what are those for? But he had talked about wet dressings and dry dressings, each application and why. So I'll let you can pick which one you want to go through first of all three of those: compression dressings and then wet and dry, or however you want to do it.
Compression dressings are so much fun. I love compression dressings because you're compressing something that's bleeding and you're stopping the bleeding. So you don't have a tourniquet, so you got to do a compression dressing. And the first thing you're going to use is some gauze. So gauze works really well to apply pressure to a wound. And then you're going to put other things over top of that to help keep it in place. So either ACE or vet wrap, Curlex gauze will work too. And then you're just going to leave it alone, and you're going to put pressure on it, because the compression will stop the bleeding eventually. No, it'll stop it actually pretty fast. And a dry dressing is good pretty much for almost any type of wound when you aren't quite sure what's going on. But keeping it covered and protected is good. You want to keep a wound about the same temperature as body temperature, and a dry dressing will help keep the wound warm and close to body temperature. Now, it'll also be a little bit breathable. Dry dressings are typically breathable. if there's too much moisture in a wound, because maybe there was like a Band-Aid was left on too long, or had an occlusive dressing on it and there was lots of drainage from the wound. Well, now you've got a really nasty, soupy mess. And a lot of times you can tell that a wound is soupy and messy because it'll be white around the edges of it. And that's maceration. So like when you've been in the shower too long or the bathtub too long and your skin turns white, well, when your skin turns white around a wound, that means there's too much moisture. So a wet dressing is really good to help counteract that, because what you do is you take some gauze. Again, you're going to use gauze.
Real quick though, so a dry dressing, I just want to clarify, a dry dressing would be like that pressure dressing you just showed right there. A Band-Aid, a piece of gauze and some wraparound, right? Anything that it doesn't
dry.
have anything in it, right?
Anything dry. Yep. So even the gauze, this foam dressing, that would be considered a dry dressing unless you put something on it. And then this is an alginate dressing. Same thing. It's dry, goes on dry. But actually alginate is really good for absorbing extra gunk from a wound.
What is alginate? What is that impregnated with?
This is
that the right word? Impregnated?
It's not impregnated. It almost looks like felt. I don't know if you can see that.
It's a little white, but you can kind of see it.
Yeah, I don't want to open it because that would waste it. It almost looks like felt, but it's very absorbent. So more absorbent than gauze. And if you have a heavily draining wound and you put something like this on it, that will absorb all that drainage and keep it off the skin and keep it off the wound edges. So anything that's going to keep the moist wound dry is a good idea. But when you're talking like a wet dressing, there are some times when you need to add moisture, and actually these silver gels, those add moisture. So those are really good. But if you want to do a simple wet to dry dressing.
Real quick, before you get to that, because I interrupted you before, I'm interrupting you now too, but you were talking about how when your skin is macerated and that could actually be a good situation to use a wet dressing. When it's already macerated, why wet dressing?
Because what you're going to do is you are going to take your gauze again, and you're going to take something to get it damp. So saline works really good, like little saline bullets. Wound cleansers, those work really well because you're going to be cleaning out the wound at the same time that you're, keeping it wet. You don't want it dripping wet, just moisten. So it's just damp. Then you're going to fold it or pack it into the wound. And then later on that evening, the goal is that that's going to dry out. Then what you're going to do is you're going to pull it out. And then what that's going to do is take off that excess moisture.
So a wet dressing isn't necessarily one of those things that like the petroleum gauze and all that's impregnated with the stuff. It's just something that you make wet and then eventually it'll dry out and help you. It kind of sucks that moisture out, I suppose. Okay.
It does, but there are I don't want to say wet dressings, but there are dressings that will help a wound keep the moisture in it. Like Elastogel, it's a gel type dressing. Duoderm will keep moisture in, but even adding the silver gels and stuff, that is going to keep moisture in too, and that's going to make it more of a wet wound. Because sometimes when a wound is too dry, it can't heal. So you're trying to create this perfect moisture balance to promote healing. You don't want it too wet and you don't want it too dry. You want it just right so that it'll heal.
Yeah.
And even then, sometimes, depending on somebody's blood flow, if they don't have good blood flow to a part of their body, say a foot, for example, it's going to be really hard to have a wound heal.
And I forgot where you were when I interrupted you for the second time. Do you remember where you were for that part? Okay. Do you have any, before we wrap this section up, do you have any other supplies or anything you want to show anybody, tell them about, show and tell, basically?
Yes. I wanted to share this. This thing is so cool. This is actually, it's like a little scope. So it's an ear camera. And what it does, I don't know if I can turn it on. Oh yeah. Can you see the light? You can actually put that in your ear Or you could probably put it up your nose too.
I would hurt myself. Either orifice, I'd hurt myself.
But it has an app on your phone so you can actually see inside your ear. And this is like the coolest tool I have bought. And I showed it to actually some of the doctors that I work with, and they're like, that's like a scope. And I'm like, I know, it's so cool. And I know you're not supposed to stick things and stuff in your ear, but like I think it was like a week ago, I couldn't hear and it was killing me. My ear didn't hurt. But it was awful. So I got this guy to see what was going on in my ear, and there was some stuff going on in there.
You got that, and I was like, "Don't do that. You don't do that."
Yeah.
Did your mom ever tell you?
I wanted to show you the pictures, but you didn't want to see my pictures.
Oh. All right. So, Kevin also in the chat here, real quick. He had a quick tip in here. He said, I didn't want to put this up while you were talking, but petroleum jelly with Benadryl for a good topical application for extreme bug bites. Safe, nice, safe, and very effective. Do you have anything else before we get on to the important stuff, the aliens?
I don't think so. I think it's just important for especially anybody that is getting into preparedness. Take some classes, learn some basic first aid, learn how to deal with sunburns, learn how to deal with small wounds, insect bites, things like that for your family, and start putting together your first aid kit now, because you'll need it. There's no way that you will go without using a first aid kit. And it could, I don't want to necessarily say it could save somebody's life, but it could. Or it could definitely make things a lot easier for you until you can get to the doctor.
Yeah, there absolutely could be that situation where it is an SHTF situation. It is a situation that it's going to be a while before medical help is going to be available. So having the skills, the training, all of that stuff would be important. It makes you a valuable part of somebody's group. The more training, the more experience you have in all this stuff, the more supplies and the ability to use all of those supplies makes you a more valuable person. So, and on top of that, just a daily and everyday basis, you are going to use the crap. And it's something that doesn't get talked about as much as I think it should in preparedness, because we're talking about food, we're talking about security, we're talking about all the fun stuff, right? But the first aid is absolutely that stuff that we buy a lot of stuff. I keep saying stuff. We buy a lot of gear and supplies as preppers that we just kind of put on the shelf and hope we never have to use it, but it's there just in case we do. Water filters and things like that. But first aid supplies, there's an investment that goes into it, but you're going to probably use most of that stuff. And if you don't, say you do have gauze pads that go bad. You had the Silvazorb. That was kind of there's not a lot you can do with that once it expires, but a lot of them you can use them for practice.
Yeah, I'll use them for training. The horses. I use the Silvazorb when it's expired on the horses.
That's true.
I mean, it is what it is. But like where you get your little gadgets and stuff and your preparedness things, these are my gadgets. This is what gets me excited.
Yeah, that's true. Hey, Brandon in the chat said, wait. What about alien wound care? What if they crash in my yard and I'm the first responder?
I think I'd run away, Brandon. I'd hide.
I'd be going to getting a shovel or a gun or something.
Just run away. Just run away.
I'd be okay. We'll get into this alien stuff now, because
don't be the hero, Dale. Not when it comes to aliens.
It's called I'm making sure the damn sucker's dead. It's not going to move. Same thing with that when I see a spider or some sort of snake or something like that. It's beat the crap out of it till it doesn't move anymore. That's what I'm doing. I'm not tying up some sort of alien and and waterboarding him in the garage trying to get information about where he's from and all that. No, smash, you dead.
I don't think it would be a really good idea to get too close to one, because it's like Columbus and the Indians, right? And how Columbus brought smallpox to the Indians. What could those aliens potentially have? I don't think I'm going to want to get too close to them.
Yeah. Plus the whole probe thing. That bothers me too. So it's like, you don't want to get too close.
I got a probe now, so we could probe them back.
Yeah, you could. Hey, one last
No,
thing on
you
first
could.
aid. Brandon said, speaking of first aid, the good lesson here is, and reason is not to get hurt in the first place. Stay safe. Yeah. Because in an SHTF situation, that's just going to make a situation even worse.
Well, even on a daily basis, I mean, think about it. You're screwing around. You're just not taking the time. You climb the ladder. You're not taking the time to make sure that everything's secure. You didn't have somebody help you, and you fall off the ladder, and then you break your ankle. Well, you're done. I mean, for a minimum of 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah.
You probably can't go to work. If it's your right ankle, you can't drive. So, I mean, it's just taking a few extra seconds and just planning ahead for before it becomes an accident. I mean, because that's how accidents happen, right?
Yeah.
We all do stupid things. So if you just kind of take a step back, take a breath, and make sure you're prepared before the things that you attempt to do or have some assistance.
Yeah. Hey, real quick here, one more thing on this, and then we will move on. But I saw this, and he said special request, so I had to go for it. But he's talking about it on its batshite crazy. Said choking and asphyxiation. I think this is one. Take a class, right? I mean, because that is absolutely one that could be, regardless whether you're talking about an SHTF situation, whether you're talking about you just having kids over, having a barbecue, something like that. That is something you really got to know what to do, and you can't be Sandra Bullock. What was that movie where she was?
Oh my goodness!
She stabbed the dude in the neck with
or
the pen.
something. Where she did a tracheotomy.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, you don't want to be that guy. So just to understand, it's not that hard, but understand what you need to do, and make sure that you're able to do that. And sometimes it's not as easy as just, kind of getting them to hawk it up. Sometimes it gets really lodged in there, and you got to figure that stuff out. Didn't you just take a CPR class?
I did. I just did thankfully I don't have to do the ACLS. I just do the BLS, the basic life support. But yeah, when you do your BLS, and I think it's even just for everybody, when you do CPR training, that for choking, that is actually one of the topics that's covered in CPR, because sometimes if you can't get whatever's in there dislodged, then the patient person ends up passing out and they're unconscious and they're not breathing. So then you're going to start CPR. So it's a part of it.
Or you put on the movie The Heat and you fast forward to that part and you figure out what to do, right?
Which movie?
The Heat. Wasn't that what it was?
Oh, figure out how to do a tracheotomy? I don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't think so, Dale.
All right. Enough of this stuff. Let's get on to the aliens, because we were talking about with the alien in the backyard thing and all that stuff. There's been a lot of stuff going on this week, and I've got my thoughts on it, but we're going to save it till a little bit afterwards. But I want to play this first part with the report. They call him a whistleblower, even though he was allowed to come out and talk about it. So I don't know how that constitutes whistleblowing, but that's what they called him anyway. But let me play this little clip right here first, and then I want to get your thoughts on your sort of reaction when you first heard all this stuff, your reaction this week. Almost like because people that have been listening to this show for a while know that I basically give you a hard time about this stuff. So this is almost like one of those, it could be one of those I told you so moments, but I'm not so sure. You don't think so? Let me play this real quick, and then we'll get at your thoughts on the whole thing.
Or so. Really, what whistleblower David Grush said yesterday, it was just the beginning. Tonight, he explains how they know these craft are not human. He tells us about other countries who also have crash retrieval programs, and why he says some of the non-human life may not be friendly. New revelations from whistleblower David Grush, who says America has a UFO crash retrieval program and non-human craft in its possession. Now Grush is shedding light on exactly how the secret government program knows the craft are not of this world.
Why do you know it's exotic?
Based on the very specific properties that I was briefed on, isotopic ratios that would have to be engineered for it to be at those levels, but also just extremely strange, heavy atomic metal, high up in the periodic table arrangements that we don't understand, what the emergent properties are, but there's just a very strange mix of elements.
So you're absolutely sure that the materials that these craft are made of.
Now, I got the link to this whole video. I'm not going to play this whole thing because it's like 14 minutes long. But the first thing that got me when he said that they may not be nice, and it was like, shocker, go figure. But what do you make of this dude? What were your initial thoughts about what's going on, and what other information do you know about this so far? What have you heard from your wacko Giorgio Sokolos's and your what's the fat guy that you listen to all the time?
Clyde Lewis.
Oh yeah, Clyde Lewis. What has he had to say about it?
Oh my God. Okay, so Clyde Lewis, that's where I heard about this first. And he was like floored that this was not all over the news, because as you saw, this was on News Nation. And this wasn't everywhere. This was only on News Nation. And then it started getting, leaking out, and everybody was, oh, okay, I guess we'll start talking about this. And, instead of the really important things like, but I can't say that, the news always talks about. But when I first heard about it, I was listening to Clyde Lewis and I was like, this is so cool. And then I listened to it a little bit more. And then I was like, okay, so a whistleblower, there's a definition of a whistleblower. And what it is someone that a government agency is doing something bad and like nefarious, and this person knows it and they're going to come out and talk about it.
That's
but the
what
fact
I think.
that he worked for them, worked for the government, I can kind of get that, like Snowden, but they gave him permission, or they basically gave him permission of things to talk about, but he couldn't share any photos. He couldn't share like specific things, which I get, but it just seems a little fishy to me. And I mean, I am like the biggest wannabe believer ever.
Yeah.
Thinking that the aliens are coming. Not that I want them to, but I mean, come on, this universe is like endless. And to think that we're the only ones here, that's pretty, that's pretty out there.
I thought it was, when I heard the story and I heard this interview, I watched the whole thing and I was like, he went to the Department of Defense or whoever it was. He wanted to come out with this story, but he went to them first to ask permission. Yeah. So that is not a whistleblower, and that just seems to me like it throws away all credibility, because if you're asking them for permission, the government, regardless of what agency, doesn't like to give away even the smallest little stuff. But when they're like, "Yeah, go tell your story, bro. Go have at it," that makes me wonder a little bit.
Well, the thing that makes me wonder about it, because I mean, lately we've been seeing on the news, and they're talking more and more about it. And like when the China balloons or whatever they were like, well, they're UAPs, and they were the ones, the government was the ones that changed the terminology from UFO to UAP. So, and then we're going to go back to saying UFO. So they're like bringing this mainstream, and I'm just curious why, because for the longest time,
yeah,
I mean, I'm the whack job because I believe that there's life out there. Now, do I think that they're going to come here? Probably not intentionally anyway, because I'm pretty sure we don't have anything that we could offer, a different species or, whatever, an alien that is capable of traveling, billions and billions of miles. I'm pretty sure we don't have anything to offer them. And in fact, we'd probably take advantage of them. And I'm sure that we have in the past. I do think that there's aliens here. I do think that the government is working with them. And I do believe that there are alien spacecraft that they have. In fact, they said, everybody thinks, what is it, Area 51, that has the alien stuff and the spaceships and alien ships and everything. But actually, it's Wright-Patterson Air Force Base where they keep a lot of this stuff. And I can't, so one of the doctors that I used to work with, he actually passed away, but he was at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and he was very, very, just smug about things and stuff. And It was always about him. He was always talking about himself. But if I could catch him off guard a little bit, he wouldn't necessarily talk about it, but he wouldn't not talk about, because I would always ask him about aliens.
Yeah. I just think I don't know. Somebody in the chat, Samson here, said the whistleblower just doesn't feel sincere, feels scripted. And when you, let me play the beginning, see if I can play the beginning of this. You look at, and even in this part, when you look at his face, the way he's talking about things, and in the beginning, when you hear the politicians and even the press secretary, they just kind of have this look like, yeah, we got you all. You guys are all distracted. You guys are paying attention to this bullshit, so we'll just let it go. But let me play this real quick and see if this is the right part.
Whistleblower who says America has a crash retrieval program with non-human craft in its possession, and that it's kept this secret from Congress and the American public.
There will be oversight of that. I've heard about it. I don't know anything about it.
See the smirk on his face? I don't know if you can see that. Let me put it in full screen. I know you're... let me put it in full screen. Just watch the smirk on his face.
Representative Burchett and Representative Luna on the Oversight Committee are very interested in this issue, and they're taking the lead in this issue.
So there is going to be oversight on this?
We plan on having a hearing pertaining to that whole issue.
I would say I want to hear what he saw and let the committee that's got responsibility for it ask the questions.
So to me, it all seems like, oh, let me put this back on this shot right here. To me, it all seems like this is something, especially when you think about all the news that just came out about Biden and Burisma. You got Trump that was just indicted, which I don't think they want to deflect from that story. I think they want that to be a huge story. But with things like the aliens, with things, all the trans stuff going on, these are all stories that are kind of put out there, and they're letting them build up. That way we're not paying attention to the assholes that are, and again, I'm cussing a lot in this show tonight. We're not paying attention to the people that are just completely destroying the country. And the corruption and all the BS that's going on right there. So sort of like Area 51, and this is my belief. I know you probably don't believe this at all, but Area 51 was allowed to become this big thing, this pop culture thing, with the place in Nevada and the aliens and all that stuff, because people were talking about that and they weren't talking about the top secret things that were going on there. So I think this is sort of that same type of distraction type thing. Hey, let's let these plebs talk about their stupid little aliens, and let's throw a whistleblower out there to make them believe that this is kind of juicy. And regardless whether they believe it or not, they're going to talk about it rather than talking about us. That's what I think.
I just don't understand why they have to have committees to discuss, and we're going to have hearings about the aliens. It's like, are you kidding me? It's like, it almost seems like a slap in the face to people like me that do believe in extraterrestrial life. Okay. But it's like, really, I'm not buying it. I wanted to, I was very, very excited about it. And then I just kind of, I don't know. It just didn't seem credible. I mean, he seems very credible, but that's part of the, the part that makes me think it's not legit. It's like they're doing it on purpose, and they're releasing information that we already know. We know that they have crash retrieval systems. We know that they have, there's spaceships. We know that they have this stuff. No, we can't prove it, but I mean, I don't know. It's just kind of frustrating, because it's literally like they're slapping me in the face saying, "Oh, here you go. Here you go. You're crazy conspiracy girl. You don't really know what goes on. We'll show you what goes on." Yeah. Or their version of it.
Hey, Brandon said here in the chat that Area 51, he said, I think that Area 51 blew up because of public knowledge about SR-71, and that was Blackbird, right? And that was sort of, well, there was a little bit with the alien spacecraft that got down before that. But yeah, that's when that's when everybody started to figure out there was a whole lot of stuff going on there that we had no idea about, more than flying saucers and all of that stuff, right?
Yeah, but I think Area 51 was more of the experimental aircraft and stuff, because
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm 100% right, but the stealth, didn't they get stealth technology and they were working on it out of Area 51?
Yeah, that was the Blackbird that I was talking about. And I'm not
Okay.
sure, Brandon, you'll have to let me know. Is that the same plane that I'm thinking of, or is that a different one? But yeah, it is. That's what they were working on out there. Yeah. And then that's what led people to kind of go that, oh, they're stealing alien technology and they're using that for this stealth stuff. And there goes right there. I know you're thinking, well, they are.
Exactly. But I don't necessarily think they're using it for the stealth stuff. I mean, look at the Nazis and Hitler and the Wunderweapons that they had. And they were trying to make these crafts like they were like spaceships. So it was like they were trying to reverse engineer, this alien technology that they had. And then that makes me think, okay, so then is that maybe why we got, what's his name? Werner von Braun? Maybe that was why they wanted him here. Maybe that's why they brought those Nazi people here, because they had that information.
Nazis did some weird crap.
I know.
Some of the crap, you look at it and you go, my God. I mean, Hitler must have been on acid or something like that, doing mushrooms every day or something, because some of the crap that they tried to come up with, I thought Americans were crazy and maybe Russians are crazy, but those people in Germany back then, holy crap, they were, on a different planet. I don't know. So, but hey, a couple things real quick. Kenzie in the chat had talked about, and I know that you've mentioned this to me before, but nuclear weapons. It seems like whenever there's nukes or anything like that going on, there's always alien activity. A couple of comments he said, and then I'll let you expand on it. Is it a coincidence that we're close to a nuclear war and these aliens are appearing? And then he also said, wasn't it back in the 40s? There was a lot of nuclear weapons testing, and then aliens started to appear back then, or the sightings and things like that. Yeah. So, what is is it like the aliens just kind of camped out there, and then they see we're doing some crazy crap, and then they're like, oh crap, these people are about to do it. Let's go watch. They're about to blow themselves up. Oh no, they didn't. Okay. What is your theory on that?
It could be, or it could be maybe that the nuclear technology, maybe they need that for maybe they need that for powering their spaceship. I have no idea. But yeah, it is really interesting that around like when there's nuclear testing or nuclear sites and stuff, there is an increase in alien, ship sightings and stuff. So, or maybe the nuclear stuff or the fission or whatever it is giving off some signature that's attracting them. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't either. What are your thoughts on the fact that most of these UFO sightings, UAP or whatever they're called these days, are almost all of them are real close to military bases? So that sort of in itself shoots out the otherworldly type thing, doesn't it? Because it seems to me like a lot of these things are probably projects that we have no idea what they're working on, but they're testing them out. But you think no?
I don't know. I mean, that's why they're unidentified, right? I mean, what was it 2 years ago when all of the drones were out here and they were going first they were by Denver, but they were out east, and I didn't get to see them. I was pretty bummed about that. But I mean, people were just seeing all of these little drones, but they weren't drones. And it was very odd. And then that story just kind of went away. They went from Colorado Springs, Pueblo, and then out east. And I don't know, but then I also think about cattle mutilations are on the rise again. Why is that happening? Was it Oregon? There was 7 prize bulls or something that were killed, and same type of things that were done in the 70s where there's no blood anywhere around these animals. And it's surgical precision that these, their tongues are gone. Or their udders, if it was a cow. It's just weird. So
do you buy the crop circle crap?
What?
Do you buy the crop circle crap?
Yeah, that stuff's cool.
You think that's aliens and not some dude with a 2x4 walking through a cornfield?
There's no way. No way.
Can't believe I've never asked you that question before. I don't see why, unless Pablo Picasso is up in heaven or he's an alien or something and he's coming down and he wants to play in a cornfield. I don't see why an alien would come down here and draw pictures in the middle of Kansas somewhere.
Maybe it's a marker so that someone from space can see that, or not necessarily space, but once they get like into the lower atmosphere, maybe they can see that.
Could be, yeah.
Just
you guys,
like, what is it?
You guys got all the answers.
Lines? The Nazca lines, you can see that really high.
Yeah, there are some crazy stuff like Puma Punku and all these. What is the Nazca lines and all that stuff, which is pretty interesting. But just because it's interesting and just because we don't know doesn't mean. And I know I'm fighting a losing battle here, but just because we don't know, I will admit though, it is pretty interesting. But just because it's interesting doesn't mean that it's, it wasn't.
What?
Yeah, there was probably a lot of crap going on back then that we think happens this way, but it happened a complete different way, and we just have no idea because it's in the past. So, at any rate, I want to move on to this last part right here because this was the one where Brandon was talking about an alien in his backyard or whatever. This is
so cool.
I saw this and I was like, yeah, okay, I've got a couple things to nitpick about this as well, but this is a couple people that. There was something in Las Vegas, right? I'll let you explain what happened. A light in the sky or something?
Yeah, and I don't know if this clip actually shows that it was the police officers that they saw the light too. They saw something in the sky, and then they got a 911 call from this family, and it wasn't like very long after that.
Yeah, and this video right here I'm going to play is actually the body cam of an officer that his buddy is the one that saw it. So that's the officer even says in here, he's like, the reason I'm responding this is because my buddy saw what was going on. So I want to see what's going on here. So yeah, a police officer saw it in the sky, but nobody saw the 9-foot tall dudes in these guys' backyards. Instead of just explaining all this stuff, let me go ahead and play it right now. And then you can expand on it. We'll expand on it after this.
It's almost midnight on May 1st when a Las Vegas Metro police officer's body cam catches this, something flashing low in the sky.
911 emergency.
Minutes later,
there's like an 8-foot person beside it, and another one's inside, and it has big eyes and looking at us, and it's still there.
Someone calls 911 reporting 2 large figures in their backyard.
No, I'm so nervous right now.
The 8 News Now investigators obtaining another officer's video as he's sent to the Northwest Valley home.
I have butterflies, bro. Everyone saw a shooting star, then these people say there's aliens in their backyard.
By now, it's more than an hour after that bright light. Officers meeting up with the caller and his family.
What'd you see?
It was like a big creature.
A big creature?
Yeah, like around 10 feet tall.
I'm not going to BS you guys. One of my partners said they saw something fall out of the sky too, so that's why I'm kind of curious. Did you see anything land in your backyard, or?
They see like a big, that's what they say. They see like a big something with light.
What I saw right now, I do believe in it.
Police walk into the backyard to investigate, but Metro blacked out that part of the video because it's considered private property. What's clear, they're taking this call seriously.
Hey, this might sound like a really dumb question, but did you guys see anything fall out of the sky?
Asking others what they saw.
I would normally discount it as nothing. However, seeing as one of my partners said they saw it too, only reason I'm actually investigating it further.
That investigation turning up no concrete answers as of Wednesday. Whatever or whoever
But would you really? I don't think you would. No, because even think about like when COVID happened. A lot of people were terrified, but a lot of people too were just like, huh.
I was muted. They couldn't hear a damn thing I said. That's too bad because I was making a lot of sense, and now you guys aren't going to know what I was talking about. I was just saying. Let me go back and say that one more time then, since I was muted. But I was talking about this. They didn't seem all that excited. They didn't have a cell phone, and I was like, there's a point where just because they don't have a cell phone, that is not a deal breaker for me. Because when you think about if there was, you walk outside in your backyard and you see an alien, or you see, like I said just a minute ago, if you walk outside and see a bear out there, the first thing you're doing is not grabbing your phone to try to record it, right? So if you were to walk out and see this big 9-10 foot tall alien dude, I'm flipping my crap and not even think about it. And then you said, that's where you came in and said, would you really? And I said, yes. And why were you saying that you don't think I would, or you don't think you would, or
I don't know how I would respond, but I'd be like, okay, trying to gather the information. But I think that family sounds way more credible, and those police officers sound even more credible than our supposed whistleblower. And I also think it's really interesting that if you look at that video and the streak that they saw, that the police officer saw in the sky, it was actually also seen in 3 states. So it wasn't just in Las Vegas. It was seen in different states as well.
And this is old, right? This isn't like... It's
not that old. That was another point I was going to make, is this was done, I think, May 1st. And they said that in the beginning of the news report, that it happened on May 1st. Well, isn't that interesting that these, people saw potentially aliens in their backyard May 1st, and here we are, June, it's like 10th? And now this whistleblower is coming out. Why? Was there something that that family wasn't supposed to see? Are we not supposed to know that yet? So, we're going to make everybody feel warm and fuzzy. We know what's going on. We know that there's aliens out there, just nothing to see here. So I honestly think that the police officers and that family are way more credible. And I think who knows, maybe because of that, that's why this other story is coming out.
Yeah. Hey, a couple comments real quick. Samson said, what if crop circles are created from below surface underworld? What are your thoughts on that, Lisa?
It could happen.
Like
anything's possible.
Suck the corn down.
I don't know. Maybe it's magnetic. You don't know, Dale.
All right. And Kenzie said here, I think that if there were aliens near you, your inner instincts would kick in and you'd probably run. I think I would kind of like when you see even a garter snake. I'm outside working in the yard or something and I see a garter snake. My first instinct is to jump 18 feet off the ground and backwards. So if I'm going out there and I see an alien, I don't know. Maybe you do just kind of like freeze and you're going, what the is that?
I think that's more realistic. You're just like, what?
Yeah.
What is that?
And then Brandon said here, talking about the nobody ever has a camera. He says, you clearly haven't met my aunt. She'll grab a camera phone before she'll grab a shotgun. That is a lot of people these days. And that's why I bring that up, because it's like, with all the cameras and everybody always having them on and recording everything, you would think somebody would have a good, not blurry shot of aliens, but that hasn't happened yet.
Maybe they move too fast.
Yeah.
Maybe they're interdimensional.
Maybe they got good pictures of them, but got probed immediately after. And then the men in black came, shine their little flashy light in their faces and, all that cover up and all that stuff. Yeah.
You never know.
Yeah. Yeah. I was thinking when I first heard this story, I was like, oh, great. Here's Lisa's I told you so moment. And then I watched a little bit more of it and it was like, no, not this dude. This is definitely a distraction. This is definitely a government plant. This is like some Ray Epps crap with aliens right here. This is the government saying, go out here and say this crap to keep these people entertained.
Yeah, just to, okay, here, we're going to throw you a bone here. Yeah, we'll talk about this. And we have a whistleblower. Whatever. I mean, it's just like their hearings that they had and, there's alien, there is alien life, blah, blah, blah. Well, we already know that. And why do you think that they're trying so hard to get back to the moon? Why is China putting stuff up on the moon? India, all of these different countries are like, they're fighting tooth and nail to get to the moon. Why?
Yeah, that is definitely interesting as far as why all of a sudden this is information. Instead of calling everybody out of their damn minds, now they're talking about, hey, it could be this, could be that, could be this, could be that.
We're going to have hearings about it.
Yeah.
Oh, goody. It's like we're going to have a Tupperware party and discuss aliens. Thanks, government. Appreciate it.
Not that they're efficient with any damn thing they do, but all right. I think we are going to get out of here tonight. We're going a little bit long tonight, which is just a fun conversation. I knew that it wasn't going to all be first aid. It's going to be UFOs and crap like that too. But everyone in the chat, do you have anything to add on this before we get out of here, Lisa?
No, I just thank you so much for letting me come back on and yell at you a little bit about my aliens. And thank you everybody for watching me rant a little bit about my aliens too.
Yeah. And just so people know, the newer people, the tinfoil hat time isn't always about aliens. It just happened this week that it was perfect timing.
It was so perfect.
Yeah. So a lot of times Lisa is the conspiracy theorist. It's too bad that you don't listen to Alex Jones anymore. Now it's Clyde Lewis, but it used to be anytime, Alex Jones would say something, we'd get on and talk about it, but all sorts of crazy conspiracy theories. So we'll have to have you back on and talk about some of the other stuff. Plus, conspiracy theories these days, I don't know if there's many left because they're all basically coming true.
They're all being proven true.
Yeah.
They're not conspiracy theories. They're like spoiler alerts.
Yeah. Manny said, good show. Thank you, Manny, for joining in today. Good to see you, Lisa. Dorian, enjoy it, Lisa and Dale. Enjoyed it, Lisa and Dale. Information. Again, everyone in the chat, all the comments, Kanzi, Brandon, everybody, thanks for all the comments and everything. All American Prepper, thanks for joining in tonight. Really enjoyed it. He said, yeah, All American Prepper is just a cool dude. He is a character.
I love All American Prepper. Yeah. Oh my God, I love that guy. He is so cool. Yeah. He's awesome. He's awesome.
He is a character, man. He's a good guy. He's a really good guy and knows his stuff.
Absolutely.
So. But that's it for tonight, everyone. Again, appreciate y'all joining in. We are going to get out of here. Hopefully we'll have Lisa on at some point, but like we talked about in the beginning, she's only got about 800,000 things going on. So I'll get her. The only reason I got her tonight is because she's on vacation. So I made her come on the show. So, but take care and prepare, everyone. We'll talk to you all later.